They say blood remembers, not just your name or face, but your sins, your pain, the echo of your screams. Blood remembers the day the sky cracked open and the old world ended, when clouds rained rust and oceans ran crimson. Cities burned without flame, consumed by something far worse than fire. That was the day the first Vitae Arns awakened. They weren't crafted by human hands. They were born, forged from bone and war and desperation into weapons that hungered for blood. Not metaphorically. They demanded literal sacrifice. A drop of blood for seconds of power, a deeper cut for minutes. But push too hard, give too much, and they consumed more than crimson. They devoured souls. The first time I touched one, I didn't bleed. It ignited anyway. That's when I knew I wasn't like the others. And if anyone discovered the truth, they'd chain me to a wall and drain me dry for power. So I learned to hide. To survive in the ruins, trading information and scavenged parts while keeping my secret buried deep. For 3 years, I managed to stay invisible. Until the day I saw the skyship fall. The Pylite skyship had fallen hard into the wasteland, just beyond the ruins I called home. Flames still licked the twisted metal, while black smoke curled into the bruised sky. I should have stayed away. Crashed ships meant either scavengers or worse things drawn by the scent of blood and desperation. But something pulled me forward. Maybe curiosity, maybe the way the wreckage seemed to hum with an energy I recognized but couldn't name. I kept to the shadows behind a broken support beam, watching as someone dragged himself from the smoking debris. A man in his mid-20s, scorched monk robes torn and bloodied. His leg left a crimson trail as he crawled, one hand clutching an Ignis core blade, a blood-fed weapon with its pulsating core exposed along the spine. The blade sputtered uselessly, drained and cracked. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, melted back into the ruins and forget what I'd seen. Survivors meant complications, and complications got you killed. Instead, I found myself stepping closer. He spotted me immediately, despite his injuries. His hand jerked toward a dagger at his hip with practiced precision. This wasn't just any monk. "Back off," he hissed through gritted teeth. "I've still got fight left." I raised my hand slowly, noting how his grip remained steady despite the blood loss. "Relax. If I wanted you dead, I'd have let the fire finish the job." His eyes narrowed, studying me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Scavenger?" Something like that. I kept my distance, but not because I was afraid of him. The broken weapon in his hand was calling to me, its damaged core singing a song only I could hear. He tried to sit straighter, but winced, nearly toppling. "If you're here to rob me, I've got nothing worth taking. Maybe I'm here to help." The words surprised me as much as they seemed to surprise him. That earned a bitter laugh that dissolved into coughing, blood speckling his lips. Nobody helps anyone anymore, not unless there's profit in it. "You're not wrong." I knelt beside his weapon, fighting the urge to touch it with bare skin. Up close, I could see the extent of the damage. "Your Ignis is cracked. Blood flow's disrupted. Try to activate it again and it'll backfire. Probably take your arm with it." His expression shifted from suspicion to intrigue. "You know weapons." "I know blood. Too well," I didn't add. "And I know that blade's about to become very expensive scrap metal, unless someone fixes it properly." For a moment, we studied each other in silence. Then he made a decision that would change both our lives. "Help me," he said quietly. "Please." I should have left him there. Even as I helped him to the shelter I'd carved from the ruins, a hidden space behind fallen concrete and twisted metal, I knew I was making a mistake. But his weapon kept singing to me, its broken core pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. "What's your name?" I asked as I cleaned his wounds the next morning, trying to ignore how the dried blood on his skin seemed to glow faintly in my presence. "Darian Vale." He winced as I tightened the makeshift brace around his injured leg. "Pyrolite monk, or was anyway. Pretty sure I just retired via fireball." Despite everything, I found myself smirking. Explosive exits are memorable. He managed to grin through the pain, and I caught myself noticing how it transformed his whole face. Dangerous thinking. "Suppose I should thank you. You could have left me for the scavengers." "Still might," I said, though we both knew I wouldn't. "What's so important that you'd steal from the Pyrolite Order and crash a skyship over it?" His expression grew serious. "You really want to know?" I thought about it. Knowledge was dangerous in this world, sometimes more dangerous than ignorance. But something about this broken muck and his impossible journey had hooked itself into my curiosity. "Show me." He studied me for a long moment, his gaze calm and thoughtful, weighing every micro-expression. It was then I realized he hadn't just been looking at me. He'd been reading me, the way a weapons master reads the balance of a blade. "You didn't bleed when you examined my weapon yesterday," he said quietly. My blood turned to ice. "I was careful." "No." His voice held absolute certainty. "I watched. Your skin touched the core when you checked the fractures. Any normal person would have been cut to ribbons by the feedback. You didn't even flinch." The silence stretched between us like a blade's edge. I could kill him, right now, before he could tell anyone what he'd seen. It would be easy. He was wounded, weaponless, trusting me. Instead, I met his eyes and told him a truth I'd never spoken aloud. I didn't need to bleed. Something shifted behind his gaze. Not fear, understanding, and something else that made my chest tight. "Then you need to see this," he said, reaching for his pack, "because I think you're exactly who I've been looking for." What he showed me made my stomach lurch and my blood sing in equal measure. The map was a strip of preserved human skin, inscribed with living blood runes that pulsed with their own heartbeat. But it wasn't just the macabre material that affected me. It was the way the symbols seemed to recognize me, glowing brighter as I leaned closer. "That's human flesh," I whispered. "Was human," Darian corrected, his voice reverent. "Now it's a map, stolen from the deepest vaults of the Order, where they keep the things too dangerous to use and too important to destroy." The runes shifted as I watched, rearranging themselves into new patterns. "What does it lead to?" "Ruins beneath the black spires, a place called the Vitae Originum." He watched my face carefully as he spoke the name, and I knew he saw my reaction. The way my breath caught, the way something deep in my bones seemed to resonate with the words. "The source," I breathed. "You know it?" I shook my head, but that wasn't entirely true. I didn't know it, but part of me remembered it, the way you remember a dream upon waking. "What's there?" "The first core, the original source of all blood weapons." He leaned forward, intensity burning in his eyes. "If we can reach it, we can shut them all down, end the cycle, break the chains that bind our world to this endless hunger for blood and death." The scope of what he was suggesting hit me like a physical blow. "You mean destroy the only thing preventing the factions from complete annihilation?" "The weapons don't prevent war. They fuel it. Every drop of blood they consume makes them stronger, makes their wielders more desperate for power. It has to end." "You're insane." But even as I said it, I found myself studying the map more closely. The symbols were moving faster now, almost excited. "Maybe, but I'm not wrong." He reached out and covered my hand with his, and I felt the warmth of his skin against mine. "You feel it too, don't you? The call?" I did. Deep in my blood, something was stirring. Something that had been sleeping since the day I first touched a weapon and felt it respond without my sacrifice. "You'll die before you make it halfway there alone," I said finally. "I know." His smile was sad and determined. "But I have to try." I stared at the map, at its pulsing symbols that seemed to show me not just a path through the wasteland, but a path toward answers I'd been seeking my entire life. Then I looked at him, this broken monk with his impossible mission and his willingness to trust me with secrets that could get us both killed. "Lucky for you," I said, carefully rolling up the map. "I'm not ready to let you die yet." His smile brightened, and for the first time in years, I felt something other than the constant weight of survival. I felt hope. We made it 3 days into the wasteland before our past caught up with us. I should have known the Order wouldn't let Darian's theft go unpunished. Should have realized they'd send their best hunters after something as valuable as the flesh map. But I'd grown careless in those 3 days of traveling together, distracted by his stories of the world beyond the ruins, and the way he looked at me like I was something more than a survivor with a dangerous secret. The bloodhounds found us at dawn. They emerged from the crimson mist like nightmares given form. 6 symbiotic mercenaries with weapons surgically grafted to their spines, feeding directly from their arteries in an endless loop of pain and power. Their pack leader's yellow eyes fixed on me immediately, and I knew we were in trouble. "Give us the girl," he commanded, saliva dripping from his modified jaw. "We can smell her power from here. Crimsonborn, she'll make us gods." The words hit me like ice water. They knew. Somehow, they knew what I was. Darian stepped between us without hesitation, his repaired Ignis blazing to life as he fed it his blood. "You'll have to go through me first." They laughed, a sound like breaking glass and dying screams. "Stand down, monk," the leader snarled. "The Order wants their map back, but they want her more. Give us both, and we might let you live." "Over my dead body," Darian replied, settling into a fighting stance I recognized from the old texts. Master-level Pyrolite combat forms. These weren't going to be the easy kills the Bloodhounds expected, but there were 6 of them, and only one of him. "Darian," I said quietly, my hand moving to the concealed blade at my hip. "When I say run, you run. I'm not leaving you. You won't have to." The Bloodhounds attacked as one, their symbiotic weapons screaming with hunger. Darian met them blade to blade, his Ignis carving burning arcs through the morning air. He was magnificent, faster and more skilled than I'd imagined, but he was still just one man against 6 enhanced killers. So I stopped pretending to be human. I reached out with senses I kept buried for years and touched the blood in the air. Every weapon within 30 feet convulsed as I wrapped my will around their hunger and turned it against their wielders. Blades that had drunk from their masters' veins for years suddenly remembered what it felt like to be free. The screaming lasted less than a minute. When it was over, Darian stood among the bodies, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. His blade had gone dark, no longer fed by his shock. "You're not just someone who understands weapons," he said finally. "No. You are the weapon, or something like it." I nodded, waiting for the fear to enter his eyes. For him to realize what he'd been traveling with. Instead, he smiled. "That's why the map called to you. Why you could repair my blade without bleeding." He looked at the fallen bloodhounds, then back at me. "You're connected to the Originum, aren't you?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm starting to think I need to find out." He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the wonder in his eyes instead of fear. "Then we'd better get moving. If the Order sent bloodhounds, they'll send worse things next." As we gathered our supplies and prepared to leave the battleground behind, I found myself stealing glances at him. He'd seen what I could do, seen me turn living weapons against their masters with a thought, and he hadn't run. Hadn't tried to kill me or chain me or use me. Maybe, for the first time in my life, I'd found someone I could trust with the truth of what I was, even if I didn't fully understand it myself. That night, we made camp in the shadow of a broken highway overpass, the ancient concrete dividing shelter from the wind that carried whispers of rust and old blood. The sky above us pulsed low and red, like a cosmic heartbeat, and I found myself studying the patterns in the clouds while Darian tended the small fire we'd risked building. The attack had changed something between us, not just because I'd revealed my abilities, but because of how naturally we'd fought together, like we'd been partners for years instead of days. Now he sat close as I cleaned and stitched the gash across his ribs where one of the bloodhounds had gotten through his guard. His shirt opened to reveal a map of scars that told the story of a life spent in conflict. "You have so many," I murmured, tracing a particularly jagged mark with my fingertip. "Each one a lesson," he said quietly. "The Order believes that pain teaches discipline." I looked up from my work. "Do you still believe that?" He considered the question seriously. "I used to think loyalty was my greatest virtue. Unquestioning service to something larger than myself." His hand covered mine, stilling my movements. Turns out it was just another cage. I set aside the needle and thread, suddenly very aware of how close we were sitting. "What made you break free?" "A dream," he said, then laughed at my expression. "I know how that sounds, but 3 months ago, I started having the same vision every night. A woman with power over blood, standing before a crystal that held the heart of all weapons. She was crying, but not from sadness, from relief." My breath caught. What did she look like? Dark hair, eyes like storm clouds, scars on her hands from touching things she shouldn't. He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "She looked like you." The silence stretched between us, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Outside our small circle of firelight, the wasteland pressed close, with all its threats and mysteries. But here, now, there was only the warmth of his skin, and the way he looked at me, like I was something precious instead of something to be feared. "Kayla," he said, my name soft on his lips. "What are you really running from?" "Everything," I whispered. "The people who made me, the ones who would use me, the power I don't understand. I met his eyes. Myself. Most of all. He leaned closer, near enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. You don't have to run anymore, not with me. I'm not running, I breathed, and realized it was true. Not tonight. When he kissed me, I didn't resist. For the first time in my life, I let myself fall, not into darkness, but into the possibility of something more than survival. His hands tangled in my hair, and mine traced the scars on his chest, each mark a story I wanted to learn. Later, as we lay entwined beneath the bleeding sky, he whispered against my hair, "Whatever we find at the Originum, whatever you discover about yourself, it doesn't change this. It doesn't change how I see you." I wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, because deep in my bones, I could feel something stirring. Something that grew stronger with each mile we traveled toward the Black Spires, and I was beginning to suspect that when we reached our destination, the woman who arrived would be very different from the one who had started this journey. The landscape grew stranger as we approached the Black Spires, as if reality itself was losing cohesion. Birds flew backward through skies that bled color. Rivers flowed uphill, their waters running red with minerals that tasted of copper and old pain. The weapons we carried hummed constantly now, no longer requiring blood to activate, but drawing power from the very air around us. "It's getting stronger," Darian observed on our fourth day, watching his Ignis pulse with light even though he hadn't fed it since the Bloodhound attack. I nodded, feeling the change in my own bones. The pull toward our destination was almost physical now, like a cord attached to my heart, drawing me forward. We're close. The Black Spires themselves appeared on the horizon that afternoon, jagged towers of obsidian that seemed to bend light around them, creating shadows that fell in impossible directions. At their base, I could see the entrance to the ruins Darian's map indicated, but something massive blocked our path. A guardian. The golem stood over 20 feet tall, its body carved from living bloodsteel that pulsed like a heartbeat. Battle runes covered every surface of its form, and its blade arm could have cleaved mountains. It had been waiting here for centuries, maybe millennia. And the moment we crested the hill, its head turned toward us with the grinding sound of continents shifting. "Vitae Defender," Darian muttered, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. The map mentioned them, guardians of the deep places. But I was already walking forward, drawn by something I didn't fully understand. The guardian's presence didn't feel hostile. It felt familiar, like recognizing an old friend after years apart. "Kayla, wait!" The golem roared as I approached, a sound that shook dust from the ancient stones. But there was something in that roar that made me pause, listening not just with my ears, but with the power that ran through my veins. It wasn't a challenge. It was a question. I closed my eyes and let the song rise from my blood, not with my voice, but with my essence. Ancient words in a language I'd never learned flowed through me, and the guardian staggered as if struck. Its blade arm lowered, and slowly, impossibly, it dropped to one knee. "What did you just do?" Darian whispered, awe coloring his voice. I approached the kneeling golem and pressed my palm against its warm armor, feeling the life that pulsed within the bloodsteel. Images flashed through my mind, memories that weren't mine, but felt like coming home. "Sleep," I whispered, and it obeyed. As the guardian settled into dormancy, its form gradually merging back with the stone around it, I turned to find Darian staring at me with an expression of wonder and something that might have been fear. "You commanded it," he said, "like it knew you." I was trembling from the effort, from the strangeness of using abilities I'd never known I possessed. I think it did know me, or what I was made to become. I looked toward the entrance to the ruins, where ancient carvings seemed to writhe in the shifting light. "The Originum isn't just the source of the weapons, Darian. I think it's the source of me." He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "Then let's go find out what that means." Together, we walked toward the entrance that would lead us beneath the earth. Toward answers and revelations that would change everything we thought we knew about the world, and about ourselves. The stone passage swallowed us like the throat of some vast beast, and with each step deeper into the darkness, I felt more of my true nature awakening. By the time we reached the depths, I suspected the woman who had started this journey would be nothing more than a memory. But Darian's hand in mine anchored me to the person I chose to be, rather than the weapon I'd been designed to become. At least I hoped it would be enough. The deeper we descended beneath the Black Spires, the more the world around us changed. The tunnels weren't carved by human hands. They were grown, like the interior of some vast organism. Walls of obsidian and root pulsed with veins of red light, and every surface seemed to breathe. The air itself was thick with power, making our skin tingle and our weapons hum with barely contained energy. "This place is alive," Darian murmured, his voice echoing strangely in the organic corridors. "We're inside something," I agreed, feeling the truth of it in my bones. The flesh map in my pack had grown warm against my back, its runes glowing bright enough to see through the leather. Something that's been waiting a very long time. We'd been walking for hours when the whispers started. Not words exactly, but the memory of voices carried in the movement of air through the passages. They seemed to be calling my name, or something like it. A name I'd never heard, but recognized nonetheless. Sanguinaris, Bloodsinger, the last key. Darian heard them too. I could see it in the way his grip tightened on his weapon. The way his eyes darted to the shadows that seemed deeper than they should be. "They know we're coming," he said. "They've always known." The certainty of it surprised me. This was always meant to happen. The crash, our meeting, the journey, all of it. Destiny? There was skepticism in his voice, but also a growing acceptance. We'd seen too much strangeness to dismiss anything outright. "Design," I corrected. "Someone or something planned this. Planned me." The ground ahead suddenly split, with a sound like breaking bones. And from the chasm rose 3 figures that made my blood run cold and sing with recognition simultaneously. They were tall, draped in crimson shrouds that seemed to be cut from shadows themselves. Their armor was crafted from the same blood steel as the guardian above, but theirs was more refined, more personal. And their eyes burned with the same core light I'd seen in the most powerful weapons. "Soulforged Knights," I whispered, the name coming from some buried memory. "The first servants of the Originum." The center figure stepped forward, ancient armor scraping against stone with each movement. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding millstones and distant thunder. "Crimson-born, Sanguinaris, the key we forged and lost." It tilted its head, studying me with those burning eyes. "You have come home at last." Darian moved protectively in front of me, his Ignis blazing to life. "She's not your anything." The knight's attention shifted to him, and I felt its amusement like a physical weight. "The catalyst speaks. How fitting that love should be the force that brings our creation back to us." "Catalyst?" Darian's voice was tight. "You think your meeting was chance? Your dreams mere fantasy?" The knight's laughter was like breaking glass. "You were shaped as surely as she was, monk. Molded to be her anchor, her guide, her willing sacrifice." "No," I said, stepping beside Darian. "You're lying." "Am I?" The knight gestured to the walls around us, where the veins of light were pulsing faster now, responding to our presence. "Look with your true sight, Key. See what you have always known but feared to acknowledge." Against my will, I felt my perception shift. The world peeled back its layers, revealing the threads of power that connected all things. And there, wrapped around Darian like golden chains, I saw them, lines of force that led back through time to his childhood, to the moment he'd first dreamed of serving something greater than himself. They'd been shaping him his entire life, just like they'd shaped me. "Kayla," Darian said softly, and I realized he could see it too. "It doesn't matter, doesn't it?" The knight stepped closer. "When you know he can never truly choose you freely, when every feeling, every moment of connection is built on manipulation, pain lands through my chest, not physical, but deeper. The possibility that nothing between us had been real, that I was truly as alone as I'd always believed. But then Darian's hand found mine, and his fingers intertwined with my own, with the same gentle strength they'd shown every day of our journey. "I don't care," he said, looking directly at me instead of the knights. "Maybe they shaped my dreams, guided my choices. Maybe they made me capable of seeing you clearly instead of fearing what you are." His grip tightened. "But how I feel about you, that's mine. The choice to stay by your side, to help you find the truth, to love you despite the danger, that's mine." The knights hissed in unison, their forms wavering like heat mirages. "Foolish. The core calls to her. She will answer, willing or not." "Then you'll have to go through both of us," Darian replied, raising his blade. The battle that followed shook the living walls around us. The Soulforged Knights moved like liquid shadow, their weapons extensions of their will rather than mere tools. Darien fought with desperate skill, while I reached out with my power, trying to turn their own bloodsteel against them. But they were ancient, powerful, and they knew me better than I knew myself. "You cannot defeat us with our own gifts," the lead knight snarled as our weapons locked. "You are what we made you to be, nothing more." "You're wrong," I said, and for the first time, I truly believed it. Not because of destiny or design, but because of the choice I was making in that moment. I'm what I choose to be. I reached deeper than I ever had before, past the power they'd given me, to something that was purely my own. The will to protect what I loved, regardless of how that love had begun. The knight's eyes widened in what might have been surprise or fear. Then it crumbled to dust, its bonds to the Originum severed by a force it hadn't accounted for in its grand design. Free will. The other two knights fell moments later, their ancient forms dissolving as I cut their connections to the source of their power. In the silence that followed, the flesh map in my pack burst into brilliant flame, before crumbling to ash. But we no longer needed it. The path forward was clear, carved into the living stone by our victory. Darien pulled me close, checking for injuries I didn't have. "Are you all right?" I nodded, but I wasn't sure it was true. With each step deeper into this place, I could feel more of my nature awakening. Soon I might not be the woman he'd chosen to love, but I would still be someone who chose to love him back. Together, we walked toward the heart of the world, toward answers that would change everything. The final chamber defied all comprehension, a cathedral of blood and bone that stretched beyond the limits of sight. The walls pulsed like a living heart, and the ceiling disappeared into darkness, punctuated by floating islands of fused bone that drifted slowly through the vast space. At the center of it all, suspended in midair by nothing more than will and ancient power, hung a crystalline sphere the size of a building. The Originum. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure, a swirling mass of liquid vitae that contained every drop of blood ever spilled by the weapons it had birthed. But more than that, it contained memories, screams, the echoes of every soul devoured by the hunger it had unleashed upon the world. And at its very center, something that looked almost like a human figure. "Is that," Darien whispered. "The first sacrifice," I said, the knowledge flowing into me from sources I didn't understand. The person they used as a template when they created the system. They're still in there, still conscious after all these centuries. The sphere pulsed brighter as we approached, and suddenly I could hear it. Not words, but pure emotion given voice. Pain, loneliness, a desperate, endless screaming that had been going on since the day the world broke. "Help me," it pleaded. "Please, make it stop." I stepped forward, but the air grew thick as honey, pushing against me with increasing resistance. Each step was a battle, not just against the physical barrier, but against my own nature awakening in response to the Originum's proximity. "Kayla," Darien called, his voice seeming to come from very far away. "Are you sure about this?" I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Power was flowing through me in ways I'd never experienced, rewriting my understanding of what I was and what I was capable of. The human woman who had started this journey was fading, replaced by something vast and strange and terrible. But at the core of that transformation, one thing remained constant: the choice to act with love rather than hunger. I reached out and touched the sphere. Reality shattered. Visions flooded through me, not just the history of the weapons, but the truth behind their creation. I saw the scientists of the old world, desperate as their civilization collapsed around them. They'd found something in the deep places of the earth, something that predated humanity by eons, a source of power that could reshape matter and energy at will. But it demanded payment, always payment. So they'd fed it the willing sacrifice of a young woman who'd believed she was saving the world. They'd used her blood, her soul, her very essence as a template for the weapons they created. And in doing so, they doomed the world to an endless cycle of hunger and violence. The woman in the sphere had been the first Crimson-born, and I was her echo, created centuries later as a failsafe, a key that could unlock the system and set its original sacrifice free. "Will you destroy us?" the Originum asked, in a voice that was mine and not mine, ancient and eternally young. "No," I whispered, understanding flooding through me. "But I will set us free." I poured myself into the core, Not my power, but my choice. My will to break the cycle rather than continue it. My love for a broken monk who'd been shaped to guide me here. And my determination that love born of manipulation could still become real through mutual decision. The originum screamed as I rewrote its fundamental nature, changing it from a consumer of souls to a liberator of them. Around the world, I felt the weapons respond. Their hunger died. Their cores went dark. The terrible symbiosis between wielder and blade finally ended. The figure in the sphere's center opened eyes that were exactly like mine and smiled with profound relief. Then she dissolved into light, finally free after centuries of torment. The chamber began to collapse around us, the living walls losing their coherence, as the power that had sustained them for so long transformed into something entirely new. "Kayla!" Darian grabbed my hand, pulling me back from the dissolving sphere. "We have to go!" I let him lead me toward the exit, though part of me wanted to stay and watch the beautiful destruction of this place. The woman who had entered this chamber was gone, replaced by something that was both more and less than human. But the core of who I chose to be remained unchanged. I was Kayla. I loved Darian Vale. And I was going home. Afterblood. We emerged into a world transformed. The red-tinged sky was clearing, revealing blue so pure it hurt to look at directly. The air smelled of rain and growing things, instead of rust and old blood. In the distance, I could see the black spires crumbling as the power that had sustained them for millennia finally dispersed. "You did it," Darian said, his voice filled with wonder and exhaustion in equal measure. We did it, I thought, but the distinction felt less important now. What mattered was that it was over. The weapons were silent. The hunger that had driven civilization toward endless conflict was finally broken. But the cost had been higher than either of us had anticipated. "I can feel them," I said quietly, watching the sunrise paint the world in colors I'd never seen before. Everyone who was bound to the weapons. They're free, but they're also lost. Most of them don't know how to live without that connection. Darian nodded. There will be chaos for a while. Wars fought with conventional weapons, power struggles as the old hierarchies collapse. He looked at me, and I saw both love and uncertainty in his eyes. The world will need guides. People who understand what came before and can help build what comes next. The implication was clear. I was no longer just Kayla, the survivor with a dangerous secret. I was something new, a bridge between the old world and whatever came after. The last keeper of blood magic in a world that no longer needed it. "Will you help me?" I asked, the question containing multitudes. "Will you stay with me as I figure out what I've become? Will you love the person I am now, even if she's different from the one you fell for? Will you help me use this power responsibly instead of letting it consume me?" He took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine in the gesture that had become our anchor through every transformation. "Always," he said simply. And for the first time since the day the sky cracked open and bled, I believed in something more than mere survival. I believed in the possibility of building rather than just enduring. Of love that could grow stronger even when its foundations were revealed to be less than pure. Of a future where power served wisdom instead of hunger. Together, we walked away from the ruins of the old world and toward whatever we would build in its place. The sun was rising, painting everything in gold. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow might bring. I was curious to discover it.